Steele and managing change in the restart. And Peter Mayrick is back with us, and we're talking about what's next and the process being used to manage change. And for many of us as senior leaders, there are massive change management issues ahead. Before we come to Peter Mayrick, the pastor's heart, and look, we would like your support. You can share us on social media or tell another ministry leader who might benefit from this program about us. And look, we do want to ask for your help financially. If you could go to www.patreon.com/thepastor's-heart and help us out, I don't know, $5, $10 a month. We do want to grow, we have a vision to grow, but we're not actually quite covering the costs of employing the little team who helped put this together. And so if you were able to help us out with that, then that would be great. Now, change management, and lots of it ahead. There are some churches where it is relatively straightforward the way to go. There are some churches where actually you've got to stay where you are for quite a long time. And then there are some churches where actually we can do the restart, and maybe even as early in Australian churches as next month, but it's going to require quite a lot of rejigging, quite a lot of change management, and there's a whole lot of opinions all around us. Peter Mayrick from the Centre for Ministry Development is with us, and thanks for coming in, Peter.
Thanks for having me, Dominic. It's a pleasure to be here again.
It's only a month ago that we were sitting here. Yeah. We just watched Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison's announcement, and we said July.
Yeah.
And it's just happened so much faster than we expected.
It's happened so fast, and to be honest, when we last met, I was selfishly disappointed that the Prime Minister was saying we're going to talk about opening, because I felt like pastors needed to have a bit of time for reflection. I felt like when you think about change, Kirsty Bucknell, our org psychologist, would correct me and say, you know, change and transition are two separate things. Mm-hmm. Change is the physical change, transition is the emotional or psychological change. And I felt like just after Easter, pastors hadn't transitioned emotionally. They'd changed with adrenaline and they'd done a fantastic job.
Yeah. And people were tired.
They just needed a chance to go, and thank you, Lord, we've done really well. Now let me think about what we've done well. What do I need to thank you for? And how could we do it differently as we move forward? And what might we take forward? And then suddenly, bang,
it's on again.
We're talking again.
And actually, it's actually got more complex as we've started to realise this next transition is going to be much harder than the last one.
Absolutely, Dominic. And I think the reason why it's going to be so difficult is none of us know what the future will look like in the next 6 months. Mm-hmm. We can describe what we think the future will look like in 2 years. Mm-hmm. We just don't know what's going to happen the next 6 to 12 months and how fast and what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I think for many pastors, many ministers, that's disconcerting. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about pastors, typically pastors like to know where they're going. Yep. They like to have confidence and have people think that they're confident about the plan and the plan is well thought through.
And you coach a number of pastors, and so you're talking to lots of people every week about this. What are guys saying? Guys
are feeling the frustration of not knowing and not being able to say, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and this will work. They're actually, well, is it 20? Oh, it's 50. Cleaning. Oh, how would we do that? And I can't do that. I'm going to need people to do that. I had a pastor just the other day, as I said to you on the phone, who allowed 2 of his growth groups to come into the church, and they were craving coming in, and they hated it.
That has surprised me. I mean, you said that to me on the phone. Our experience here has been positive, in that since the limit was raised to 50. I've been thinking, if we go to 100, in whatever format we go to 100 in 19th of July, the beginning of term 3, I don't want that to be the first time our members come into the building. Do you know? And if we can seed people coming into the building before then, in one way or another, and just seeing that we've got good health and hygiene procedures, all those kind of things, that's a positive.
And I think there's merit to that, Dominic, and for some people that will work really well, and there's credit to what you're doing, but to be honest, you don't know. Just like This guy thought that these groups were going to enjoy it. They were groups who were meeting on Zoom. Look, one of the ladies in one of those groups was meeting on Zoom on the phone because she didn't have the internet. She wanted to go back to Zoom. It was such a letdown to be meeting in a growth group in a socially isolated fashion. Whereas other people, I'm sure, will love to be meeting physically.
Well, we've left the choice up to our group leaders, up to the group leaders in consultation with their groups, because, I mean, people will have different health and safety. They'll have different anxiety levels just about that whole thing.
And hopefully they can read the group. But this is the thing: is we're not on firm ground here, and that is disconcerting for pastors. One of the most valuable formats we've been finding is roundtable conversations, Zoom clusters, our normal clusters, because what actually happens on those things is guys get to hear each other and hear that the guy across the table doesn't know the answer, but he's thinking about this. Gee, it feels good because I don't know the answer either. Oh, there's another person who's wrestling with the same thing. It must be okay to not know.
Now, I wanted to have this change management conversation with you. And really, it was a friend of mine on Facebook, in a minister's Facebook group, who got me onto this, because, and I'll just read you his question that he posed on Facebook.
Terrific.
The changes we're entertaining at our church have significant impact and are sufficiently complex. We have 2 sites. One's not usable really with social distancing. Kids ministry and families will need to be split across different congregations. We've got reduced staff, and we want to do the whole comeback well. And so, what do I do? Help.
And I think the answer is you do the best you can and you flex. This is going to be hard. This next piece is going to be disconcerting because you can't plan and know what the response is going to be. We've talked a lot over the last few weeks with different people about going back to a new normal, using the opportunity for change and things like that.
We talked about adaptive change.
Yeah, that's right.
About taking us to a new place. But actually, and there are cultural issues we'll want to do. We'll want to do adaptive change. There are some things we want to leave behind. But actually, I think there's just the question of, can we get people back together? You know,
there is.
And some aren't going to be able to, but some are, with a rejig.
And this will take leadership. So in that Facebook post, I think the guy mentioned Kotter, and I was really pleased to hear Greg Lee talk on a symposium recently. He said, just read Kotter. Go and Google Kotter, Kotter, and you'll work it out. John Kotter is the guru of change management. He's not a Christian writer. Well, I don't know if he's a Christian, but he's not writing as a Christian. He's writing for business. But in his the way he encapsulates change management, I think, is just very rational and pragmatic.
There's 8 steps.
There's 8 steps, but I think if you go and look at it and think about what it would look like, put your theological lens on as you read it. Don't take your theological hat off. Put it on and read it through that lens. But he says some really helpful things. Above all, he says, he starts with what we call the burning platform, getting people to want to change. Well, we're in a...
the place is on fire.
We're changing anyway, so we don't have that problem. His second step is, I think, the most important step, and it's often the step we don't do enough of in ministry. He talks about getting a guiding coalition. And a guiding coalition is a group of people who can help you plan and map change, who can help you think about change. Now, this sort of change we're talking about is change that is very uncertain. If I take a step back, when we're talking about strategic planning, my hate on strategic planning is a desk plan. Because planning is not a solo activity. Planning is a team sport. Planning needs to involve others and involve others' brains and attitudes. In this particular time frame, you must have other heads around the table, because no matter how intelligent you are, you don't know the whole picture. And so a guiding coalition is the opportunity to bring people around a table, around a Zoom platform, whatever it might be, to talk about what might happen, and to discuss and agree and think about piloting or trialling or experimenting. But you need to have the different voices. And folks, please don't make your guiding coalition your ministry team. bring onto your guiding coalition people who understand the context, who understand the people, some of your key lay leaders, some of your key lay influencers.
How big should the guiding coalition be?
Look, if you've gone to 8, you're probably getting towards, you're fine. If you get to 15, it's too big. But just a few heads is fine. 4 to 8 is a good number. Enough that you can get a sense. But I like 8, and the reason why I like 8, because the benefit of a guiding coalition is not just the multiple brains, because none of us have all the answers, but it's the communication that comes off those people.
And so you've said don't just use the ministry team. What if you have 8 on your ministry team? You've got to say some people go off it?
I think so. I think that's a reasonable thing. You don't have to have everyone on the guiding coalition, but you may do. There's no hard rules. We need to be smart with this. But what I am trying to say is get some of those key influences on that team, because they can understand what's going on out there. They understand outside of the ministry bubble, which none of us would sort of admit that we're in, but we are. And they can represent. But importantly, the other benefit of the guiding coalition principle is that as we communicate, if these people are influencers, they get to be part of the communication, the informal communication, or the formal communication, because they get to say, we thought about that.
Once you've worked it out, they'll be useful in that area. But they'll have high buy-in because they're...
Yeah, or while we're collecting ideas. You see, this is going to be enormous transition, trying things out and things like that. So the first thing is guiding coalition. The second, I think, most important principle, and I'm leaning on Kotter here, but it's bigger than Kotter, is his third principle is know what the vision is, know what the direction is. And so here...
and you're saying that's third, not second?
Well, the second is the guiding coalition.
But you're actually saying you've got to bring the people together in order to come up with the vision.
Correct, because it may well be that the vision is cast and set, but that guiding coalition needs to be able to respond to that and speak to that. So they need to be set. They need to be set. Then when we talk about the vision, we need to be able to give clarity of the future. Now, I was with a guy this afternoon, and I love the fact that he could explain to me not where we're going to be in 3 months or 6 months, because he doesn't know that. But he can tell me where he thinks they'll be in 2 years or 3 years and where they're working towards. He can tell me that the railway tracks, I like the term railway tracks because you've got to travel the train down the railway tracks, it's not a road, are the mission of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
So the railway tracks remain the same, the long-term vision remains the same, but the short-term vision, we just don't know what it will be.
Yeah.
So we are able to say, we know we're going there. The future, the near future, we think we're going to want to do this. But we're ready for the fact that next week, Prime Minister Morrison might say we can have 100. Or we might have an outbreak and suddenly we're closing again. And this is where we need to be able to adapt and move. Kotter then talks about that vision being essential, and then I want to labour the point, the vision, the key thing that goes beside it is being able to communicate that. And so in the communication process, I would encourage people to know we are thinking, we are considering, please don't give the impression you know. Because you don't know.
You don't know.
and that's hard for many people because they think that people want them to say,
the oracle.
we know.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know. Remind people that we're trusting in the Lord. Remind people that the railway tracks, the mission is unchanged. Remind people of where we want to go. But bring people along for the ride, because that's what leadership is. Leadership is about followership. Christian leadership is about followership of our Lord Jesus Christ. If you think about Paul, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And so we want to bring people on the journey in a way that matures the disciples. So the communication of where we're going and that we're going down the train tracks is essential. As we explore the next 6 months, this is where Kotter would talk about empowering people to act.
But before we get to think about the next 6 months, I mean, a lot of us have got to make decisions in the next 6 weeks.
Yes.
In that, for a lot of us, the morning congregation is too big. It's got to split into two. If it's going to happen if we're right in thinking that stage 3 is going to go for 6 months, and we're in a church that we could in some way do something this side of Christmas, then we're going to have to make decisions in the next 6 weeks.
Yes, we are.
And start acting on them to bring them about in the next 6 weeks. So don't give me 6 months.
No, okay, so 6 weeks. So you have a guiding coalition, which is a group of people who can help you think about the decisions.
Yep.
You have to make decisions. We learn a lot from the IT industry and the tech industry then in the next 6 weeks when we're talking about making decisions in high flux environments, high change. What they do is, we talk about making pilots and trials in our world.
Yep.
And really what we mean is we're going to do something, but we'll use the word pilot or trial because we want to have an escape clause if it goes south.
Yep.
They talk about experiments, and an experiment has an each-way bet of going forward or not going forward. So, for example, we're going to let that group meet in the church as an experiment. You don't have to commit to it and say people can meet in the church, but we're going to see how it goes. You might say suck it and see is Australian language. I would commend that to people. Suck it and see a few times. Create hypotheses. Maybe we could do this. So,
and actually, it is a great time for experiments at the moment.
100%.
Because really, if it goes wrong, it's not my fault.
It's not your fault. And you didn't know the outcome.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can plan to the nth degree and make sure, we're going to try it and see how it goes. Now, it would seem to me that one of the most difficult ministries has been youth. And so that would be a good area to maybe bring a few people around the table and say, right, there's 4 of us here. Let's come up with 4 experiments we could try, or 8 experiments that we could try with youth. Now let's commit to 2 of them or 3 of them, or and give it a go. And let the congregation know, we don't know, but we're going to try a few things. And bring people along for a ride. And the congregation will give you lots of grace, I expect, for trying. As long as they know we're going down the tram tracks, we're going down the railway tracks, and the mission hasn't changed. And that's important.
One of his next ones is just empowering others.
Yeah.
How does that play out in the next 6 weeks?
Well, I think this plays out by enabling others to act is the language of another leadership guru, is giving people the ability to take the experiments forward, giving people the faith to do things. Don't hold it close, and give people the resource they might need to do it. Give them the guidelines. If you use the building, you've got to do this. Here are the guidelines. But give people a go.
You walk over there, and you'll be able to see some couches set up for a community group tonight. And there's a sticker on the table in the middle which says, here's how to clean it.
And that's it. So empower means trust. And look, trust is foundational to any team, right? It's the first level there of team working together. Empower it means I'm going to trust you to give it a go. It doesn't mean that we're going to do it forever, because this might be an experiment. I'm going to trust you to give it a go, and we're going to reassess it in a week, or after this meeting, or in 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. As time goes on, some of these things will stick, and you'll say, that was good, let's keep going. And leadership will look like, okay, let's keep going on that. How could we tweak it? How could we make it better? Which comes up in Kotter's list, probably about 7, I think, 6 or 7. This idea of iteration, of adding to and purifying before you make it part of your culture. But I think this is a great time to learn about experimentation. Then, and trust.
Building momentum?
Building momentum is about celebrating the wins. Now, I think that we could be much better at this. I think that we could be so much better at thanking people for the work that has been done. I just met with a pastor just then and said, have you thought about giving your staff $200 to take their spouse out for dinner? Why wouldn't you do it? Most of the congregation don't appreciate how hard ministry staff have been working. Celebrating small wins is about making a mark. Now, a small win, by the way, is an experiment that failed. We tried it. We now know that that's not what we're going to do. Thank you so much for doing that, Bob. Well done. So creating momentum is about creating the story and celebrating what we've done. Creating momentum is about acknowledging that we're moving forward.
Can I just ask you on the $200
Yeah.
for staff. The Premier of New South Wales says no pay rises for public servants. Do you know?
Yes. The Parliament threw it out.
Have they? I know. Okay. She said no pay rises for public servants. Lots of the members of the church have had pay cuts. The optics of doing better, the church has had a 30% drop in income based on the previous 12 months ago, and to improve the benefits for the staff team. Do you want to just kind of...
I think saying thank you is something we should be better at. I think that giving people thank you gifts, giving people thank you as a partnership in marriage, I think they're good things. Mm-hmm. And now is the time to do it because people are digging deep into their wells of energy. Mm-hmm. Congregations need to understand how deep that well has gone. Mm-hmm. and how tired people are. And so leaders need to recognise the need to recognise not just small wins, but the efforts of people. Mm-hmm. Now that can go south and be done poorly.
So you're on a parish council, is that the kind of thing?
I'm not on a parish council, but yes, I would encourage it. If someone raised it for me, I would say 100% every day. In fact, I'd dig into my wallet and say,
don't give it to
go
your
for
church,
it.
give it to our church.
Because I come from a culture in business which is not the same in every business, but you need to recognise response, recognise. And so if you do the delegation training or the coaching training with us, you hear the language of not only shared expectations and evaluation, but consequence management. Mm-hmm. And consequence management means the consequence of going beyond the call of duty means that you deserve to be thanked. You don't expect thanks because we do it for the Lord. I'm reading 1 Thessalonians, we're reading at church at the moment. It's quite clear, Paul didn't do it for his own gain. But that's when thanks lands, is when it's not expected. I don't feel as if I'm entitled to it. But when you thank me, I really appreciate it and it lands. Our motivation of our people is so important. We need to express gratitude. So momentum is about small wins, and momentum for people might be about acknowledging them and thanking them. And there are different ways we can thank people. So I've gone to an extraordinary one that is out of the box, but I think these are extraordinary times. Mm-hmm. And people are giving an extraordinary amount of effort. Mm. And some people will be looking at this and saying, oh man, you can do that. You're up in a parish in the North Shore of Sydney. Yeah, I can. But a handwritten note is an extraordinary way of saying thanks, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. That might be the way someone does it. But anybody who's a layperson watching this, let me encourage you. Write a handwritten note to your ministry team saying thank you for the work they've done.
Mm. What kind of new culture might we see down the track?
Gee, that's a tough question. New culture. What are you thinking of, Dominic, as you ask that question?
I'm just reading the next one and Kotter's steps to change.
Yeah, okay. So the new culture, so what he's talking about...
I mean, you've gone through the other seven. I just bowled up the eighth one.
Well, I just went so quickly through them, you didn't catch me out. Yeah. The eighth one is about embodying it in the culture and making it encultured into the organisation. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, we've gone through setting the vision, we're talking about communicating and implementing it, and recognising it. Now we're talking about embodying the culture. What that means is making it an expectation that will continue, making it part of the language that we do those things, making it part of the norm. If you think about culture, the definition of culture is it's the way we do things around here. So embodying it in the culture is making it something we regularly follow up on, we regularly assess, we look for.
It seems to me that one of the things that's going to happen almost inevitably is small is going to be the new black. Do you know?
Yeah.
In that if the government says you can only have 100 for 6 months, then you can only have 100 for 6 months. And it's going to be worth having 100 for 6 months because that's better than none for 6 months. But we do that And if we have the view of 2 years, we want that to turn into a viable congregation in 2 years' time, do you know?
Yeah.
And so it might start smaller than we'd hoped for,
Yes.
but it's actually going to be viable.
What are the things in that small that are going to help you, that you want to retain as you go forward or build your missional profile? So, for example, small might help you to encourage the saints to care for each other. Mm-hmm. If you think about our church, for a long time we've asked the saints to rely on clergy to support them, right? Small means we've asked, and this is one of the things we've done, is we've asked the lay people to care a lot for each other. Mm-hmm. So the embodiment of culture might say, how can we acknowledge that? How can we bring that explicitly to the surface to say, hey, that's good, whilst acknowledging we want that to be part of the future organisation, the future church. That's good. And so culture, embodying the culture means including it in sermons or including in what we recognise, just capturing it within the way we do things.
Peter Mayrick, thanks so much for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you, Dominic.
My guest on The Pastor's Heart, Peter Mayrick from the Centre for Ministry Development from Sydney's Moore College. And you've been with us, and we'll be back next Tuesday afternoon.